All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us for our last staff presentation of our PGAM presentation series. I honestly cannot believe that March is coming to an end. My name is Adrienne Steinruck, and I am the Administrative Assistant for the Council on Compulsive Gambling of New Jersey. Here at the Council, note that we are neither for nor against gambling. Our mission is to always advocate for providing treatment and resources to those who may be impacted by problem gambling. As it says in our company mission, we are here to provide support, treatment, and hope. As your moderator for today's presentation, let me introduce you to today's presenters, Joseph Kane and Leonard Razor. Since the beginning of 2022, Joe has been working with the council as a prevention specialist. While out in the field, he discusses the sizable growth of gambling in New Jersey since the legalization of sports gambling in 2018, what the council offers to those struggling with a gambling problem, and talks of his personal journey as a compulsive gambler in recovery. Just to share some fun facts, Joe used to work on Wall Street for 15 years, and he has been married to his wife Debbie for 30 years and has 2 kids. Now, Leonard Razor is our treatment coordinator, who has an ICGC2 and is a licensed marriage and family therapist, as well as a licensed school psychologist here in New Jersey. All 3 of Leonard's professional degrees were earned at Seton Hall University. And some more fun facts, you probably heard these, but he completed a 1-year internship in clinical psychology at Monmouth Medical Center, and he has been a private practitioner and consultant since 1983. All right, take it away, guys.
All right, thank you, Adrian. I'm just going to get get everybody going here, and I want you to maybe direct your attention to the title that we changed at the very last moment yesterday evening. Originally, it was entitled AA versus GA, and I kind of walked past the title that was listed on our board of all our PGAM activities. And I said, you know what? That sounds like a fight. That sounds like a battle between the two. And that's absolutely not what it was intended to be. So we changed it, but the content is all going to be the same. But we now are looking at it as AA and GA because they are not rivals, but you know, kind of coordinated efforts that people in recovery need, especially in the populations that we're talking about here. So with that, Joe is going to present our newly entitled presentation, A.A. and G.A.
Thank you, Len, and thank you, Adrian, for the nice introduction. Again, I'm Joe Kane. I'm a prevention specialist with the council. Just finished my 4th-year anniversary. It's going well. We at the council, the prevention specialists, have a variety of roles. We answer the 1-800-GAMBLER helpline. We get people referred to network therapists. We get people into GA meetings. We educate people on how they can self-exclude through the Department of Gaming. We go around speaking to churches and schools and prisons about problem gambling in New Jersey in 2026. And we advocate for problem gamblers and their families. As Adrian said, the council neither opposes nor endorses legalized gambling. The purpose of this webinar is an overview of the origins of Alcoholics Anonymous and Gamblers Anonymous, meeting formats, similarities between AA and GA meetings, and differences between AA and GA meetings. Now, the similarity between gambling disorder and alcoholism, in my opinion, is really quite simple, is that both gambling and drinking take over a person's activities in their daily life. Some warning signs a person may be struggling with gambling disorder and/or alcoholism may include the following. Gambling, drinking more frequently to get the same feeling, preoccupied with the next time they can gamble or drink, feel physical symptoms of withdrawal such as nausea or anxiety when not gambling or drinking, and continuing to gamble and drink despite the facts that their relationships have been affected by their behavior. One study I saw, I was out of Georgia, the potential strong link between alcoholism and gambling disorder. By the Georgia Department of Behavioral Health and Developmental Disabilities, almost 75% of people diagnosed with a gambling disorder also had an alcohol use disorder. Now, that number may be high. Most surveys I see somewhere around the 50 to 75% range. This is on the high end, but it was a national study and they had a pretty good sample size. So I only think it's growing as gambling's growing. I know at the meetings I go to, we have a lot of co-occurring alcohol and gambling people in GA and AA. Now, the origin of AA began in 1935 in Akron, Ohio, as the outcome of a meeting between Bill W., a New York stockbroker, and Dr. Bob S., an Akron surgeon. They were both hopeless alcoholics. Before their meeting, both had been in contact with the Oxford group. This mostly non-alcoholic fellowship emphasized universal spiritual values in daily living. Under this spiritual influence, Bill had gotten sober, and he retained that by working with other alcoholics. At the same time, Dr. Boggs' Oxford group membership had not helped him achieve sobriety. When Bill W. and Dr. Bob finally met, the effect on the doctor was immediate. This time he found himself face to face with a fellow sufferer who was succeeding. Bill emphasized that alcoholism was a malady of mind, emotions, and body. He learned this important fact from a Dr. William Silkworth of Towns Hospital in New York. Though a physician, Dr. Bob had not known alcoholism to be a disease. Responding to Bill's convincing ideas, he soon got sober, never to drink again. And this is kind of the founding of Alcoholics Anonymous. It started with 2 or 3 people and more from there. The origin of AA, both men immediately set to work with alcoholics at Akron City Hospital. One patient quickly achieved complete sobriety, so now these 3 men made up the nucleus of the first AA group, though the name was not used Alcoholics Anonymous yet. The origin of AA: in the fall of 1935, a second group of alcoholics slowly took shape in New York, and a third appeared in Cleveland in 1939. It took about 4 years to produce about 100 sober alcoholics in the 3 founding groups. Early in 1939, the fellowship published its basic textbook, Alcoholics Anonymous. The text, written by Bill W., explained AA's philosophy and methods. The core of this work is now the 12 Steps of Recovery. This text, accompanied by some positive editorials in the Cleveland Plain Dealer, which is a newspaper, triggered many pleas for help in Cleveland. The Cleveland group, with only 20 members, sought to help those alcoholics. Alcoholics sober for only a few weeks were set to work on brand new cases. This was a new departure and the results were fantastic. After a few months, Cleveland's membership had expanded to about 500. Meanwhile, in New York in 1938, Dr. Bob and Bill had organized a trusteeship for the budding fellowship. This foundation managed to open a tiny office in New York. They aimed to handle inquiries and distribute the AA book. Each inquiry to the office received a personal letter and a pamphlet. Attention was also drawn to the book Alcoholics Anonymous, which soon began circulating. Soon many new groups began, and at year's end the membership stood at 2,000 at the end of 1938. Then in March of 1941, the Saturday Evening Post, which was probably the most important newspaper at the time, ran an article on AA. The response was enormous. By the close of that year, the membership had jumped to 6,000, and the number of groups multiplied in proportion. By 1950, there was 100,000 recovered alcoholics could be found worldwide. By then, it was possible to draw some conclusions about the kinds of attitude, practice, and function that would best suit AA's purpose. And Bill W. summarized this in the 12 Traditions of Alcoholics Anonymous. A successful formula for AA unity, because they are the unity steps, and functioning have been achieved and put into practice. The following year still saw another significant event. The New York office activities now consisted of public relations, advice to new groups, services to hospitals, and cooperation with other agencies in the alcoholism field. As the co-founders had foreseen years earlier, it became absolutely necessary to link AA's trustees with the fellowship that it served. Delegates from all states and provinces of the U.S. and Canada were forthwith called in. The AA General Service Conference was created, and the overall functioning of AA was thereby assured for the future. In 1955, a second international convention in St. Louis celebrated the fellowship's 20th anniversary. And at this point, it was a very critical juncture. Bill turned the future care and custody of AA over to the conference and its trustees. Since then, AA has become truly global. This has revealed that AA's way feels it can transcend most barriers of race, creed, and language. Today, an AA presence can be found in approximately 180 nations worldwide, which is an amazing statistic. The origin of GA traces its roots back to the AA back in 1957 when a man named Jim W., struggling with gambling addiction, envisioned a support system modeled after the principles of AA. Located in Los Angeles, he and a small group of like-minded individuals laid the foundation for what would become an international fellowship dedicating to helping people overcome compulsive gambling. Drawing heavily from AA's 12 steps and 12 traditions, GA's approach centers on acknowledging the problem, seeking support, making amends, and ultimately living a more balanced life. The first GA meeting occurred on September 13th in 1957 in Los Angeles, California. It reflected a similar format to AA gatherings where participants share personal experiences, challenges, and triumphs. These initial meetings served as a crucible for the development of a support community aimed at fostering recovery from the grip of gambling addiction. As the years unfolded, GA's influence beyond Los Angeles and meetings were soon taking place across the U.S. This organic growth continued, and GA soon transcended national borders, evolving into a global organization with meetings held in numerous countries worldwide. Anonymity emerged as a cornerstone of the GA philosophy. Inspired by the anonymity principles of AA, GA members are encouraged to maintain confidentiality with the fellowship. This is designed to create an environment of trust and openness, allowing individuals to share their struggles without fear of judgment or repercussion. An integral to GA's impact is its emphasis on literature and resources. The Combo Book, which incorporates the 12 steps and 12 traditions of AA, stands as a foundational guide. Additionally, personal stories of recovery published by GA hope to provide inspiration and practical insights for those navigating the challenging path towards healing. The AA meeting format: meetings are typically listed as open or closed meetings. Open meetings are available to anyone interested in AA's program of recovery from alcoholism. Non-alcoholics may attend open meetings as observers. Closed meetings are for AA members only, or for those who have a drinking problem and have a desire to stop drinking. AA meetings are held in person, online, or on the telephone. Common meeting formats include the following. You have your discussion meeting, whether open or closed. An AA member serving as leader or chair opens the meeting using that group's format and selects a topic for discussion. Background for many topic meetings derived from the AA literature, such as the Big Book, 12 Steps and 12 Tradition, As Bill Sees It, Daily Reflections, and from the AA Grapevine. The speaker meeting is one or more members selected beforehand share, as described in the Big Book, telling what we were like, what happened, and what we are like now. Depending on that particular meeting's general guidelines, some groups prefer that members that speak have a minimum period of continuous sobriety. And as beginners meetings, usually led by a group member who has been sober for a while, beginners meetings may also follow a discussion format or focus on the early steps 1, 2, and 3. Step, tradition, or big book, because the 12 steps are the foundation of personal recovery in AA, many groups devote one or more meetings a week to the study of each step in rotation, while others discuss 2 or 3 steps at a time. These same formats may be applied to group meetings on the big book or the 12 traditions. At an AA meeting, the chair typically opens the meeting with the AA preamble and a few remarks. Some call for a moment of silence and or recite the serenity prayer. The chair will often ask if there are any new people attending the meeting who would like to identify themselves. Many meetings begin with a reading from the Big Book, frequently a portion of Chapter 5, How It Works, or Chapter 3, More About Alcoholism. A statement about anonymity in AA as a valuable privacy principle for new and long-time members might be read. Many meetings close with members joining in a moment of silence, followed by a prayer or by reciting the responsibility statement or other AA text. Now, the GA meeting format is a little different. Like AA, GA members are typically open or meetings are typically open or closed, or modified closed, which are the same as closed meetings, but the members would vote to include certain groups such as health professionals, guests attending with first-time members, and persons with other addictions in need of a meeting. Meetings typically start with readings from the Yellow Combo book, which incorporates the 12 steps and the 12 unity steps, and a reading from a day at a time meditation book. The combo book includes all of the readings that can be found on the GA website, including the history, about us, questions and answers, recovery and unity steps, and the 20 questions. Meetings are typically topic or step meetings. Topics to discuss may be suggested by the meeting chair or by members of the group. Step meetings focus on one of the 12 steps of recovery, usually selected beforehand. Sometimes we follow a calendar order, so in March we just did the 3rd step. The second half of the meeting includes personal therapy by the members. This gives all attendees a chance to talk about their week, reflect on past experiences, and share their story with the group. If someone is attending their first GA meeting, they will be asked the 20 questions of Gamblers Anonymous and given a chance to tell their story. Now, the similarities between AA and GA, the 12-step framework. Both organizations use the 12-step model of recovery. GA steps are essentially adapted from the original 12 steps of AA, focusing on acknowledging the addiction and making amends. The goal of abstinence. Both programs aim for total abstinence, complete stoppage of drinking in AA and of gambling in GA. We have a support structure. Both utilize meetings, shared experiences, peer support, and a sponsorship system where an experienced member mentors a newer member. Focus on addiction recovery. Both recognize that the respective behaviors, drinking and gambling, are damaging, compulsive, and often rooted in similar psychological issues. Now, there are no dues or fees. Both are generally free and open to anyone with a desire to stop their addictive behavior. And the use of the Serenity Prayer. Both groups commonly use the same prayer for guidance and acceptance. The main differences I see between AA and GA: AA focuses on abstinence from alcohol, a physical substance. GA focuses on stopping a behavior of gambling, which acts on the brain's reward system similar to substances. Terminology in meetings: and AA members share their experiences, and GA members give therapy, a term used to describe sharing their personal, emotional, and financial struggles, often focusing heavily on debt. Spirituality and pragmatism. While both are 12-step programs, GA often has a less intense focus on spirituality compared to AA, often emphasizing God as we understand Him or God light, making it more pragmatic and focused on the immediate practical issues of gambling. The financial scope: obviously, GA often addresses the intense, immediate financial, legal, and relational crisis that result from gambling debt, whereas AA focused more on the physical and psychological dependency on alcohol. As in terms of an approach to recovery, both encourage a sponsor, but GA puts a high emphasis on navigating the practical consequences of gambling debt and rebuilding financial as well as personal life. If you or someone you know is struggling with a gambling problem, please give us a call at 1-800-GAMBLER. The phone is starting to ring quite frequently as we get farther and farther into internet and sports betting. We got 13 years of internet betting in New Jersey and 8 years of sports betting. So it's only going to grow exponentially as we look into the future. So we provide support, treatment, and hope 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, which is vital that people never call up and don't get an answer. They'll always get a live person. That's the end of my presentation. I hope you have some questions for me or some comments. Uh, Please, Adrian, if you want to open up the floor, or Lenny, if you guys want to run that, I certainly would be open to any questions that anybody has.
There's one thing that I always talk about when I talk about AA or GA or NA or any self-help group, and that is that if you go through the 12 steps, and I will just read them and show you what I'm talking about. Um, Generically, they're the same, that a person admitted that they were powerless over fill in the blank, and that their lives have become unmanageable. And I think in practical real life, what that's talking about for anybody in any type of recovery is about becoming honest and beginning to deal with the reality of their situation. If you look at the second step, it suggests that you came to believe that a power greater than yourself could restore you to sanity. That's the step. Um, and I'm often reminded, and this kind of takes your back away. I was when I was early into learning about, the programs and treatment. Somebody asked me, "Did you ever ride around in your car lost? Like you were driving and you didn't know where you were, and what did you do?" And I said, "Well, usually I kept on driving until I found my way out, only the problem was that I got more lost with each and every turn I made." And they said, "Well, what did you do then?" And I said, "Well, then I pulled into a gas station to ask for directions back when people could do that sort of thing. And, I listened to the directions and probably absorbed about half of them and still got lost." But I guess, what this is all about is, you know, if you believe that there's someone that can help you, you begin to develop some hope. So whether it's the gas station attendant or a sponsor or a contact at a meeting, it's important to, begin to have some hope that what you're listening to is going to be effective. And made a decision to turn our will and God over, excuse me, our lives over to the care of our God as we understood him. Talks a little bit about faith. Now, if any of you were here for last week's presentation, or like, excuse me, 2 weeks ago's presentation about the soul of the compulsive gambler, you'll know a little bit about the importance of faith in recovery. Made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. Um, that's step 4, and admitted to God, ourselves, and another human being the exact natures of our wrongs, which is step 5, and we're entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character, which is step 6. Now, to me, that always talks a lot about having some courage, integrity, and willingness to begin to change some of the patterns of our behaviors and thoughts and actions. Um, and humbly ask, him to remove our shortcomings, which is step 7. Made a list of all the persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all, and made direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or harm others. And to me, those steps represent a lot of what humility, self-honesty, and self-discipline are all about. And again, these are 3 characteristics that I think are necessary to continue in that path of getting well. Step 10 talks about continued to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. To me, that's a very, very simple principle of taking responsibility for yourself. And then sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood him, praying only for knowledge of his will for us and the power to carry that out. And those characteristics that step, I think, addresses are patience, which I probably should work on a bit more, and perseverance, about continuing your journey into recovery. And the final step, having had a spiritual awakening as the result of these steps, we try to carry this message to other recovering individuals, again, fill in the blank, and to practice these principles in all our affairs. And now we get into some of the higher order things that I think are really important, which are about love, self-respect, and service. Now, if you take that group that those steps represent, and I'll walk you through them one more time: honesty, hope, faith, courage, integrity, willingness, humility, self-honesty, self-discipline, responsibility, patience, perseverance, love, respect, and service. You know, if a guy came to my daughter with those characteristics, I would be very happy. And again, I think that really represents the core of what healthy recovery is all about. So I have this printed up. If anybody would like a copy of it, I can certainly, well, Adrian can certainly have you obtain a copy of that. We'll send it out with certificates and our summary. Now, let me, now that I've said my little piece, let me open this up to everybody. Are there any questions or thoughts or issues that you might want to discuss? Because I know there's a couple of things going on in program these days that sometimes are a concern for people.
I have a question. I don't know how to pose it per se, but if someone has a gambling disorder and they are in recovery from alcohol use disorder, how do they like attend both? Like how does that work? Like, I mean, I guess it's a personal preference, of course, but in your experience, Leonard, how does that work if a person is in both communities?
Um, I'm going to turn this one to Joe. Um,
Yeah, I am a compulsive gambler and an alcoholic, and I make both meetings. I tend to go to more GA meetings. I'm a little more comfortable there, but AA meetings are great too. But they're both open fellowships, and the concurrence of gambling and drinking is definitely over 50%. And so, when you have a phone meeting one day, a lot of people announce themselves that this is in a Gamblers Anonymous room as alcoholics and gamblers. So it's they're both welcoming to the other, and sometimes something might tie in from the other meeting, but you try to focus on what you're there for, gambling at a GA meeting and alcohol at an AA meeting. But they're both wide open and welcoming to anyone that has a concurrent disorders.
yeah, and I guess, sometimes my answer to that for people who ask the question, and it is a very good one, by the way. Sometimes it's based on the urge. There may be an urge to drink that night, or there may be an urge to gamble that night. And I think sometimes you would attend the meeting that urge is calling you toward.
That makes sense too. I appreciate that. I have seen where there are people who are in NA and GA, and there are people like Joe mentioned who have a preference between the two. I was just trying to figure out like how to keep um someone in fellowship with the both of them, but at the same time trying to have a balance and not overwhelm them, knowing that they could, benefit from both types of fellowships. So thank you guys for sharing.
Barbara, I see your hand up. You want
Uh, Yeah, sorry, I had to unmute myself. Yeah. Um, yeah, I've attended both meetings and um, in preparation for the gambling counselor certification. I was fortunate to be able to go to a year of GA meetings in my local area, and the people in the meeting like really welcomed me and um, coming there as a person, without a gambling disorder, but they welcomed that I wanted to learn about it. But one thing and I found most of it was the same. They called the sharing part therapies rather than just, sharing or whatever. But there were minor differences. But one thing that I found interesting, and I don't know if this has changed, but in NA and AA, they have women's specific meetings. But when somebody brought up the issue of having like a women's meeting in GA, there was um, there was some pushback to that. And I don't know, this may have changed because it's been a while now since I went, but there was some discussion about some resistance to doing that. So I have the question: has that changed, or if it hasn't, what
You
is the
take that
thinking
one.
behind that?
There are women's only meetings in New Jersey, both Zoom and in person. Women's preferred is the proper term. You can't turn a male away, but women preferred, and I think that's only growing. As some of the older women start playing, on the slots on the apps. We're seeing a much bigger influx of women coming into the program. People sometimes the old um, impression of GA that it was a boys' club. I'm seeing a lot of women coming into the meetings, and they're doing great. But there are certainly women's only meetings. There's a meeting on Monday night, I believe, at 7:30. That's a women's only meeting. I can get you the information if you ever needed it, but I think there may be another one forming. But there should be, plenty of meetings to choose. We had an LGBTQA meeting, so there's been a lot of variety of meetings trying to get people in the door.
Yeah, good. And again, just my own 2 cents here, Barbara. A good point. And again, way back when, I learned an awful lot more from attending GA meetings and AA meetings for that matter, um, than I learned in school or, professionally. They were the people that really taught me about what the disorders were like and what the people, were feeling and what, their experiences were. That you couldn't get out of a book. So that would be my recommendation to people who are new to the field or, want to understand a little deeper what people in recovery are all about.
Yeah.
Gary.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. I guess it's good evening here. I'm checking in from Ukraine. So good afternoon, I guess. And hello, Don Weinbaum. I see he's here. I just wanted to share a little bit because I have some experience here where I run a program for clergy and monks, alcoholism recovery program in Ukraine. But 4.5 years ago, a bishop called me and he said, "We have a guy with a gambling problem. What do you think?" And having worked a bit with Arnie Wexler, and he helped us out a bit here, I said, "Sure. We've got the big book, we've got the steps, and the gentleman is hasn't gambled for over 4.5 years. He's really helped expand the GA program, which is basically online. That kind of happened when COVID came." And we've got two more priests with gambling problems, and uh, two of them came in, like this first fella, actually with a gambling problem, but 6 months later, spending time with alcoholics and our recovery program, he acknowledged that he was also an alcoholic, as did the other one. So three of the priests in our program are alcoholics and gamblers, and they handle it very well. If anybody wants to, know, I could always bring them in, and or we could make connections, and they could share how they did it, because it's kind of unique because GA is only in its kind of infancy here and still growing. So we've had to kind of just do whatever we can, and they relied heavily on AA, and it works. So thank you.
Joe, I think two of the big issues that make AA and GA somewhat different have a lot to do with finances. Can you take a couple of minutes maybe and explain um, what a sit down is and what
Yeah,
with budgets and
yeah, we have what they call a pressure relief group meeting in GA. Someone who's an experienced financial person gives them to the new compulsive gambler. Typically, most people recommend that you have a pressure relief when you first come into the program after a few months, or if you've relapsed and your life changed, maybe a significant change in income. But it's a great program. We have some people in New Jersey. There's probably not enough of them, but we have some people in New Jersey who are just wonderful, caring people. They don't make the person who's coming for the pressure relief feel guilty or feel embarrassed. They just talk about budgeting and where the future will go, because as you stop gambling, the money will start coming in and you can start getting your life back. So a pressure relief is something that it's not a mandate, but it's something that most people recommend the new members and the people that have been having a life change uh, take part in. It's some of the people I know who do them are just wonderful people. A lot of accounting backgrounds, business backgrounds, business managers, but people that are knowledgeable and give sound advice, in my opinion. So that's something that is unique to GA. Obviously, there's the financial component much so in GA than in AA. Although there is a financial component to AA as well, but the GA stresses the pressure relief group meeting to new members and to people with a life change.
How do they go about, formulating the budget?
The person comes with a spreadsheet and brings all their uh, pros, expenditures and pay, and they sit down and they say, "Well, we're going to pay this off first. We're going to pay this off." Um, I've never had a pressure relief, so I don't want to speak out of turn. Um, I imagine, it used to be they wanted to pay the bookie first because they were afraid of him. And sometimes that's not what they recommended. They recommended paying off a debt to a friend or a credit card company. I think it depends on the individual person. Um, but the advice is sound. A lot of people have really benefited from them, and they find after a year or two, their lives have turned around financially because of the money that they're not gambling. And if they can stay with it, that's the easiest part of compulsive gambling, getting the finances back on track. It's staying abstinent and working on some recovery that I find to be the difficult piece, because you will have urges, most likely. Uh, I'm not going to comment on relapse rates with gambling and alcohol. I think there's so many studies that have so many different answers. I don't think it's fair for me to comment which program has more relapses. But unfortunately, it's high for both. It's people struggling and going back to the bed or going back to the drink. But the one word I have that I share every time I'm in a GA or an AA meeting is hope. You always have hope, and people don't give up on you if you keep coming to meetings. Just one day at a time, you can find your way to abstinence and recovery and sobriety.
Um, and again, I think it's important to understand that as part of those budget meetings, there's always the component that says, your family is first, that you've got to take care of your family before, all other debts or issues are addressed. Um, the other thing that I think is, a significant difference between the meetings, Joe, and maybe you can comment on this too, is that there are the sit downs, like if somebody is having a personal problem or relationship problem, they'll arrange for a sit down.
Yeah, I mean that's certainly probably something a sponsor would do.
Mhm.
A sponsor would sit down possibly with a husband and wife or a husband and a significant other, and talk about, let's get it all out on the table and talk about where we're at as a couple or, um, both emotionally and financially. So it doesn't have to be a pressure relief group committee. It can be the sponsor or a friend in the program who's got a few years maybe of recovery that would be a good experience source for those people.
Yeah, but I think that is kind of more unique to GA.
I would agree.
Rocco, you have your hand up?
Yeah. How you doing? I just wanted to just touch base a little bit on the motivations for GA and AA, because I know in AA, most of the time when someone goes into the program, and this is from just my experience and listening to people, it's because of they're at a point where it's a medical emergency where they need to, stop their behavior. And in GA, it's a little different. It's usually a consequence of running out of money, or some kind of consequence at home where they're going to get divorced, or some kind of a court order where they have to attend meetings. And the significant difference through my experience, is that in GA, a lot of people focus on the money aspect of it, and they can get caught up in that for years, just focusing on how they're going to get their life back financially. But the real focus in GA is the emotional issue, because we focus on changing their thought pattern, their behavior, and the way they go about things, and also the way they respond to things in life, and not to be so reactive and you know uh, haphazard about decisions. And it's a lot of emotion that's involved in that. And I think a lot of it stems from their past. And in my era where I was born, my mom and dad told me, "You're a man, handle it." Throughout my life, that's what I've done until I got into the program. And then I realized that, I can let other people know how I feel. And you know what? Maybe they feel the same and they went through it, and we can help each other. And that's the benefit that I get from the program. That's all I got. Thanks.
Good point.
Thank you.
Adrian, your hand is up.
Yeah, no, I just want to make sure that, any of the questions that come through the chat box are addressed. There is one question from Gloria Block. She asks, do you have any observations and or comments on the value of an affected other attending Gam-Anon? How does it affect recovery of the person with a gambling problem?
I can tackle a little bit of that. I think that the nice thing about Gam-Anon, for my personal experience, was the education curve. I manipulated my wife for many years, mostly in gambling, but somewhat in drinking as well. But Gam-Anon teaches you how to get your eyes open and look for the signs of compulsive gambling, and the lying and the manipulating, and the little tricks that the compulsive gambler plays when they're maybe thinking about going back. And it's just another roadblock. And it's critical to have as many roadblocks as you can. And if a wife or a husband or a significant other is getting trained by an experienced person on what to look out for when it comes to potential gambling type moves that are leading the person back to gambling, you can kind of cut it off at the pass. But it's about the education and the knowledge base, and the not trusting, and uh, just learning to understand the signs of compulsive gambling. And it's really a great program. The people we have in New Jersey who run the main Gam-Anon meetings help a lot of people, because there's a lot of men and women who need help from their spouse, from their sons, from their uncles. It's a myriad of sources of the gambling, and they need to get educated on how to handle them with brutal honesty, and not taking them maybe at their word initially. And I don't know if you develop trust. Trust is a tough word for me. I don't think I tell Debbie, my wife, to trust me. She can respect me, but I don't think I've earned trust. It hasn't been long enough. And I'm not sure I'll ever want the trust, because that would just be one guard down that would be less of a roadblock. So that's my personal opinion about Gam-Anon. I think it's a wonderful program, and some of the people we have in New Jersey are just great.
Yeah. I think enabling is something that happens, during the process of, you know, dependency and addiction, and it also occurs even in the early parts of recovery. And it's vital that family members um, begin to get some education and address that through the program. Um, I also may comment a little bit about the changing nature and face of both, well, especially Gamenon, um, because earlier on, at least in my career, it was, made up of spouses and, you know, significant others. And now that's changing a lot because it's parents who are coming to Gamenon for their children who are getting into gambling much earlier in life. You see that too, Joe?
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, these parents call up and they say, little Jimmy or Jenny went into my pocketbook and took my credit card and lost X amount of dollars. What do I do? And if the young person's not ready, it's still imperative that the parents get to a Gam-Anon meeting to get educated on maybe ways to approach their son or daughter or nephew or whoever it is that is developing the gambling problem. But absolutely, we at the council, the ages of most of our calls, I would say, are 18 to 30-year-old males, and a lot of them are high school students or college students or newly professional people who are losing their new big paychecks hand over fist. So Gam-Anon for parents is a really almost imperative that they get educated and learn some of the signs of the dishonesty and the manipulation, and when they can get on the road to recovery and abstinence.
All right. All right, we're kind of winding down here. Are there any other questions or comments or thoughts that anybody would like to share?
Lenny, it's Christine.
Hey, Christine.
Hi. So I just want to back up real quick. Early, before I was into recovery with Gamblers Anonymous and being a compulsive gambler, one of the things that I had done in my crazy mind, for 11 months, I was regularly going to AA meetings, maybe one or two a week. And my thought process at the time was if everyone thought that I had an alcohol problem, it would be, well, they'll leave my gambling alone. No one would question it. So it's just something I wanted to throw in there as a possible scenario that people could be going through.
I'm glad you brought that up because I completely forgot about that. Um, and I remember again, in treatment, people would come in and say they had a gambling problem, but they're going to AA. And I said, why? Well, it's all part of that embedded denial. Yeah, I might be able to, really not admit what's going on and still kind of have the ruse of getting help. So good point. Thank you. Um, all right, there's one last order of business here, and I know Adrian's going to smack me around after this meeting for doing this, but um, good news and bad news. The good news is Adrian has found a position in her chosen profession, and the bad news is she's going to be leaving the council next week. So I can speak from my heart and tell you how much I'm going to miss her, and from my absolute lack of understanding of today's technology, I am going to be losing my heart and my arm. Um, but we wish her well, and I hope you all do in her new encounters. Um, and God knows we're going to miss you, Adrian.
Absolutely.
Again, thank you so much, guys. And again, thank you for everyone, attending these presentations. To those, most of the people that I'm seeing as, the treatment providers, because usually I'm the one also moderating for the treatment provider presentations. But it's just great to see, familiar faces or the same faces coming to these presentations. It means the word is getting out there. And honestly, that's what I truly hope, moving forward and even in my new chapter of my career. But seriously, thank you guys so much. It means a lot.
Yeah, and do know, I mean, hey, that you all get certificates and notes and everything else is really all because of Adrian.
Yep,
So,
no worries.
so
That's
thank
going to be
her
sent
in
out
your
Monday,
chat
so
boxes
no one's going
and
without it, I promise.
we do appreciate her and we miss her already.
No.
All
Can
right,
you
so
wait,
this
Lenny?
concludes our presentations for Problem Gambling Awareness Month. Do know that coming up on April 10th,
Okay,
we will
thank
have,
you.
okay, Adrian, you want to take that? I'm sorry.
No, I was going to know. I was going to ask when the next one is.
The next one will be on April 10th.
Okay.
And one of our providers, who name I'm sure you're aware of, Paul Lavella, is going to be doing a presentation, and we will send you out all the details and information you need to know about that. So thank you. Have a great afternoon. We'll see you all again real soon.